But much of the campaign's attacks are focused on the evidence of one expert, Dr. Dewi Evans.
There have been a number of people who are doctors and experts, particularly on neonatology, who have criticised the nature of the evidence that he gave.
A neonatal specialist, his extensive reports formed the basis of the medical case against Letby, and he gave evidence on behalf of the prosecution during her trial. He's since faced a barrage of criticism on social media, yet despite the attacks, he says he remains confident of her guilt.
I've no doubt that Lucy Letby was responsible for the murder of these babies and for the attempted murder of other babies. And this is why.
Dr. Evans debunks each of the theories of the pro-Letby campaign, one by one. One of the most damning pieces of evidence in Letby's trial was the use of a shift chart, showing she was the only nurse present in 25 cases babies died or collapsed. The table, which covered a 13-month period between June 2015 and 2016, showed that while the 38 other nurses were in attendance on just a handful of occasions when suspicious incidents occurred, Letby was at the scene of all of them. But statisticians claim there are a number of issues with it, in particular that it doesn't show other suspicious events or deaths when Letby wasn't on duty. The Royal Statistical Society has even described the chart as worthless.
That chart is a complete crock. It does not show anything. It only shows that when Lucy Letby was on duty, she was on duty. That's all it shows. It doesn't show anything else.
MP David Davis is also among those who have seized on that as evidence of a flawed prosecution.
You're not taking on board all of the extra deaths. Just you've picked out half that happened to fit with Lucy Letby's shift schedule.
It's not that the statistics were worthless, they were irrelevant. If statistics were relevant, I'd expect the prosecution to engage a statistician. If the defence had felt that the prosecution was using statistics wrongly, I'd expect them to engage a statistician. They didn't. The evidence was not based on statistics.
Postmortems were carried out on 6 of the 7 babies who died. 5 were concluded as having died of one or more natural causes, and in the other, the cause of death was certified as unascertained. Letby's supporters have questioned why expert paediatric and perinatal pathologists found no evidence of foul play, and why none of the methods Letby used to kill the babies, such as air embolus and insulin poisoning, were identified.
6 of the 7 babies who died at postmortems. Those babies who died from injection of air, i.e. air embolus, would not be expected to show any abnormality confirming the diagnosis. The importance of the autopsy was that it ruled out infection as a cause of death, it ruled out hemorrhage as a cause of death, and it ruled out a congenital problem as a cause of death. First of all, I reviewed air embolus in detail and presented 18 published papers in relation to air embolus in babies, and I wasn't questioned or challenged about this paper by the prosecution or the defence. I presented 18 research papers discussing air embolus in babies, not just the one involving Dr. Lee. And I broadly played down the significance of the skin discoloration as part of the air embolus because the local staff had not realised its significance and had not documented the information at the time. So my diagnosis of air embolus was not dependent on discovering this peculiar rash described by Dr. Lee. I was very satisfied that the tests were reliable, and I claim no specialist scientific expertise regarding how insulin is measured. The evidence given by the scientists I thought was excellent. What's important, of course, is that the insulin values were very, very high, higher than anything I've ever seen, and a value of the other, if you like, non-active insulin called C-peptide that was virtually unrecordable. So I was thoroughly convinced that this could be explained only for one reason: these babies had been given insulin.
A key piece of evidence relating to the collapse and death of baby C was an X-ray showing a swollen stomach taken the day before. At trial, Dr. Evans says this was most likely due to deliberate pumping of air into his feeding tube.
This baby would not have died but for Letby's interference. What I'm sure occurred was that he was stabilising. She was on duty. It was coming up to midnight. She went into his nursery. She injected him intravenously with air. That caused immediate collapse and also explains why resuscitation failed. That is what I am now confident happened to this particular baby. I was unaware that they'd isolated Pseudomonas organism, which is a very deadly pathogen for small babies. But Pseudomonas was not responsible for the deaths of any of these babies. 5 of the 7 babies who died had no evidence of infection. 1 of the 2 babies who were infected was infected prior to her admission to the unit anyway. If Pseudomonas was in the bloodstream, the fatality rate is very high, but that baby would show evidence of infection.
Letby's supporters say the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital was under-resourced and not capable of caring for so many tiny and vulnerable babies. They insist Letby has been made a scapegoat, and Letby herself said during her trial in 2023 that the deaths were the result of understaffing and poor hygiene at the hospital.
There's no evidence that she was a scapegoat in any way or form. There were concerns that she was present during each of these collapses, and that they became aware of that from early on. But what the doctors failed to do was establish a diagnosis, and that was the concern. And add to this a managerial system which is, quite frankly, appalling, absolutely dreadful. And I went on record following the verdict that Cheshire Police should explore the principle of corporate manslaughter, which they're now doing. The deaths that we've discussed are all the result of deliberate harm caused by one rogue nurse, Lucy Letby.
Letby is launching a second appeal against her convictions for attempted murder, and her barrister is planning a case for the Criminal Cases Review Commission. But Dr. Evans insists there has been no new evidence that hasn't already been extensively tested at her trial or thrown out at her first appeal.
I've no doubt Lucy Letby is guilty, and it's not just because she was there and she was in sole care of most of these babies, but their pattern of collapse was something that one simply does not see in looking after little babies. She was hiding in plain sight.